Welcome to another inspirational message from the River Christian Church.
We are not perfect parents by any stretch of the imagination. We have had our moments. I've had my moments for sure where, I've had to try to stop being the screaming, yelling mother. So this is not the way. This has been our way of what we have found has worked well, and maybe some things that didn't work well. But yeah, so just kind of slight disclaimer as we begin this, that it hasn't all been perfect, but we have, along the way, we found some really great principles, some great values, and things that have worked really well in our family. And so we thought we'd share those with you today.
Yeah. So we kind of live in this day of YouTube videos and tutorials and stuff, and everyone on the internet claiming to be an expert about whatever it is that they're talking about. And certainly there's one of the things that I always like to do, though, when I'm looking at things on the internet and watching some self-confessed expert tell me how to do something, I always want to look and kind of think, well, what have they produced? What have they actually done? Because I really believe that the proof is in the pudding. And so one of the things that we decided to do when we did this elective was we thought we were going to do something a little bit different. And to my mind, I've never been in a parenting elective where I've seen this done. But what we thought we would do... There
might be a reason for that.
There may be.
There probably is in hindsight.
There probably is, But anyway, what we thought we would do is that, you see, we're gonna share with you some of the stuff that we did as parents over the years with our three kids. So just so that for those of you who don't know, we've got a 19-year-old Nathan, 17-year-old Annalea, daughter, and our youngest son Jaden is 14. And so anyway, we figured that the proof is kind of in the pudding. So what we thought we would do is stick a video camera in front of our kids and actually ask them what it was like to grow up in our household. To give them to the report card, because, at the end of the day, right, they had to live under the parenting things that we're about to teach you. So, if they're looking wrecked and broken, then maybe you don't want to listen to anything we've got to say this afternoon. But, so anyway, we're just going to play this video. So what we did is we asked them 3 questions. We asked them, what do you think we did well as parents? We asked them, what was hard for you growing up, but you're glad that we did it now? And we also asked, what do you think we could have improved on as parents? We held our breath at that point. It just, braced ourselves for what it was going to come. So anyway, would you like to hear from our 3 guinea pigs? So I'm going to play this video, and the video is about 9 minutes long, but it's reasonably entertaining. If you know anything about our kids, you'll know that they are fairly entertaining. So we'll roll this and see how we go.
Right. Yeah, you can introduce yourself.
Hey everybody, my name's Nathan. I'm the eldest child in the Morton family.
Hello, my name is Jaden.
No, I need to start because I'm middle child.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Annalea. I'm the middle child of this family. I'm 17 years old and I'm in year 12 at Pakuranga College.
I'm currently living in Christchurch. I moved down here at the beginning of this year, January 2019. I'm studying at the broadcasting school.
Hello, my name is Jaden Morton. I am 14 years old and I'm in year 9 at Pakuranga College as well.
And my parents have asked me today to talk a little bit about how I was raised, some of the things I did really, really well.
They didn't do well.
Could have improved on.
It's probably just gonna be like dun 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 dun, with the thing popping up. It's like, so what did we do well?
Yeah.
They gave me a sense of identity. When I was quite young, whenever I met new people, I'd kind of either hide behind my mum or I'd just kind of run off. What I got told was that my dad just wouldn't stand for it, and I do have a slight memory of doing like handshake practices where I'd like shake my dad's hand. You look the person in the eye, you need to greet them with confidence and you say, hi, my name's Nathan. Back yourself.
When I was very little, I had something called severe speech delay. So I didn't speak quite right. There was some little problems going on with me. So
there are a lot of problems.
There was a lot of problems. I had speech therapy, so it helped me to learn English and start talking to others. But the reasons why I am here today, being able to speak in front of others, is because my parents really encouraged me.
Especially for me personally, when it's come to exams and tests and all that, they've never really put a whole bunch of pressure on us and been like, okay, you have to do well, you have to get this grade. Because I know other friends who are really worried. They're like, I have to do well, otherwise my parents are going to get mad at me. And even though we'll joke about that, we're like, oh no, our parents are going to kill us because of this. And they just know that as long as we try our best, that's the best that we can do.
Whenever my parents noticed I did something wrong, they wouldn't necessarily berate me for it. Obviously, they'd have, you know, a talk, and they'd make sure that they outlined where I went wrong. But that whole outlining where I went wrong really did help me a lot.
Another great thing I feel like our parents did very well in was one-on-one time. And so one aspect of that was daddy dates that we did. Every week it was a different child's turn going out with dad in the afternoon on a Friday. But we'd get that time to talk to one another, find out what's happening in my life and all that, which I felt was really cool because I got to, spend time with my dad, and the mummy dates were also incorporated as well, so I got time with her.
And finally, I've got here incorporated faith. The whole idea of, faith is just a normal thing, God's a normal thing. You don't need to try and make it this weird, crazy, mystical, new age thing. It was just small things like, for example, if I was going through a tough time, I could go to my parents about a problem I was having, and sure, they give me great practical advice, but then afterwards they go, you know what, let's just pray about this. And it wasn't a weird thing, they just throw it in there.
As well as Bible study, because we would get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and we would go through the Bible. And for me personally, Dad and I had a daddy-daughter devotional which had the scripture in it and then a little fun activity as well to do, which was really special because sometimes at 6:30 in the morning we would go out for a walk and go geocaching or whatever it told us to do.
So Dad and I would read the Bible, we'd go through passages and talk about it, link it to real world, and then I'd write it down in a big red book that I probably still have in my bookshelf somewhere back in Auckland. But I remember those kind of things, they helped normalize my faith, they made God a real normal thing. The faith was a very normal part of our lives, and I think I really appreciate my parents for doing that.
So something that was really probably annoying back then, but we're probably really glad that it happened, was discipline. And that was kind of obvious in a sense, but when you're younger, of course, you don't know right from wrong kind of thing. So we had this thing called the reminder, which was a spatula. And basically, if any of us were naughty to the point, like they had reminded us so many times, this is when the smacking rule was not law. They would whoopsh. And so we learned pretty quick not to do that thing. But as well as that, they would have other little consequence things as well as, hiding our favourite toys or something like that.
But look, that really helped us, I guess, now, because it really shows us now what is right and what's wrong.
Chores are probably just an expectation for any kid to have to do. So, there was things like sitting and, clearing the table after dinner and before dinner, cleaning your rooms, doing the bathrooms, mowing the lawns. But that being said, looking back at it now, I'm really glad they made me do chores as a kid, and I can't believe I'm saying this. But the fact is that it's given me a lot of good self-discipline.
Another thing that was kind of annoying back then, but glad it happened now, was every morning at 7:30 we were expected to be at the dinner table to have breakfast with one another, and so we'd sit there, have breakfast, and then it was just a good way to start off our day. And as annoying as it was, because we had to make sure we were dressed in our school uniform by then, had our bed made, and basically ready for school, we would then come out and then have our breakfast at the table as a family together. And that way we just find out how each other's going, what's happening in our lives, and it's just a great connection way for all of us to talk to one another, even though it may have been very annoying at the time.
There's a final one here, which is church, and what I'll say right off the bat is probably that, and I'm sure I'm not the only one in saying this, going to church on Sundays sometimes is a real struggle.
Church was kind of like us kids. We kind of go to church, being forced to church, as if, but it's kind of like we were too young to make our own decisions at that point.
But now I can really see why that value was instilled in me, because if I was putting church as the secondary or third priority in my life, I probably wouldn't be getting that same sort of connection down here, and I think I would just be struggling a lot.
We found God and encountered Him each time we went to church. Now it's not being forced to go to church, it's a choice of ours to go there.
Yeah, I'm really grateful my parents dragged me along to church every Sunday now, because if they hadn't, who knows where I'd be. Well, I mean, I know that there was a thing Dad had where he used to shut off the Wi-Fi at 9:30 each night, and to this day I still don't get why he did that. So, you know, don't do that.
Probably daddy tax. So basically, if we got like a pack of lollies or we won something, Dad comes through the door and he sees them and was like, "All right, people, daddy tax," and he takes one of each of our lollies.
It was never fair. So we've just spent our own money that we've earned. You know, we're little kids. We don't have a lot of money. Money doesn't grow on trees.
Considering the fact that, you know, Mum and Dad had never had kids before, and I was the first one, there was maybe a bit of a guinea pig factor in me.
You know, we felt the love, but we all know Jaden's the favourite child.
We all knew that.
I was sort of raised, I think, maybe with a lot more rules and boundaries than probably what Jaden will have at the age of 17, 18.
Like, it was really obvious from a younger age. Mum had a photo of him
And
in
her
a wallet. Only Jaden. None of us. Only Jaden. Mum's laughing. She definitely has a favourite.
I just want to say your photo wasn't in my wallet because you took it out because you wanted it for yourself.
No, you took
That's
it out.
yours,
No,
man.
you took. Oh, really?
Yes, you took it out.
But I bet it was
Oh,
the
truth all these years later.
No, because there was that photo and there's only space for
my
one
goodness.
photo. I was probably behind you.
I know this may sound a bit kind of funny coming from the son of the parents that are running this whole seminar. I'd have to really nitpick to find things that stand out to me that Mum and Dad did that I really didn't agree with. I think they got a lot of things right.
When we were asked this question, it was definitely hard for us to think of something
Yeah,
that
definitely.
they could have improved on, because we think we deserved everything that we got. You know, discipline, it was worth it. Doing chores, it was worth it. And they definitely encouraged us, loved us, and so yeah, they're just great parents, and I'm glad they're ours.
Yeah.
Very cliche, but true.
I guess just to all the parents watching this, you guys are awesome. Massive respect for you all. I'm sure it's not an easy job, but I know that, you know, God always puts those in positions he needs, and I know you guys are all in these parenting positions for a reason, to be able to nurture and develop these awesome people who've got great journeys ahead of them. So, you know, go you guys.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool.
All right, so it's quite entertaining. We did have to edit a lot out. Nathan sent us through about half an hour's worth of footage for his answers, and in fact we figured he was like a preacher's kid because he had 3 points that all started with the letter C.
Yeah.
And it became a message, really.
Yeah.
So, yeah, sadly we had to edit a lot of that out, but it was very, very good, very entertaining. So, yeah, it was great. This afternoon, we have some values that we're going to share with you, 3 values that we want to share with you to keep in mind when you're raising your kids. But underneath all these values, we felt there was a very important foundation, which we must make sure that we all have when raising kids. And that foundation is a really strong marriage. You know, we all want to be great parents, but the reality is that great marriages produce great parents. And it's really important that we have a healthy husband and wife relationship, and it's essential to the emotional health of our kids. You know, when there's peace in the home, when there's peace between mum and dad, it brings such a sense of stability and harmony for the kids and the family. And kids really thrive when they know that mum and dad really love each other, and when we keep our relationship as the most important relationship in the home, then the kids can really feel secure and really grow really well in themselves as well.
Yep. So right at the beginning in Genesis 2:24, it says that a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and they will become one flesh. And it's no secret really that God is into marriage. It's a big thing for him, and that the marriage relationship between a husband and a wife is the most important earthly relationship that we will ever have. And I think you'd be hard pressed to find a Christian who would dispute that. But you see, one of the things that can happen though is when kids turn up on the scene, we can begin to neglect that relationship simply because of the presence of our kids. You know, they're demanding time, they need our time, there's the other things that are going on in the household. And so we can begin to easily start to neglect that priority relationship that God calls us to have, simply because of time aspects. We're under pressure, under the pump. So strong families really are built on the foundation of strong marriages. And this doesn't mean that if you're a solo parent that you can't have a great family. You know, all of us, we've got to just play well with either the hands that we've been dealt or what we've got to work with. But what it does mean, though, is that if you are there with your spouse and you're raising your kids, the relationship that you have with your spouse has got to be strong. You've got to really invest into that. And the stronger that relationship is, the better security it provides for everything else that happens in your household.
Yeah, Peter and I, even from the time, even I think before we had Nathan, but definitely when he was little, you know, we'd often joke about the fact that one day we'll wake up and our kids will have left home and we'll be left with one another again. And I'd often say, you know, we don't want to be strangers when that moment happens. And you know, you can say these things, but then when babies and kids come into your life, who knows, it's another whole thing, right? It can get so busy and under pressure. But, you know, for us, one of the primary principles we always went by was that a child is a welcome addition to the family, that the whole family doesn't revolve around the child. You know, real life isn't that everybody and everything revolves around you. And I think sometimes you see it with children when sort of they become the centre of the universe or the centre of the family and everything kind of moves around them. As they grow up, at some point they're going to reach that reality that, oh my goodness, the whole world isn't going to work around me. You know, my boss isn't going to let me do whatever I want whenever I feel like it. And so it's really important that we just keep in mind that a child is very much a welcome and loved addition in the family and a part of the family, but everything doesn't revolve around that child. You know, life doesn't stop when you have a baby. Sometimes it feels like it, but it doesn't. And one of the really important things to keep up, or to begin, if you haven't been doing it, is to have date nights. And for us, you know, when our kids were little, you know, we probably had about 10 years of preschoolers. You know, often we didn't have babysitters to come and look after our kids for us to go out. We generally used our babysitters to do church events, so we weren't often able to go out on dates. And we didn't have much money at all to be able to go and do other things either. But you know, one thing we would do is we would put aside a night a week, or we'd try to, and we'd be like, that's our night. And as our kids grow up, we'd say to them, hey, tonight, you know, Mum and Dad, we're having a hot date tonight, you know, which they would hate. And, you know, like, especially as they kind of were in the primary school years, we'd be like, no, you guys need to make sure, you know, you're off to bed and all the rest of it. We'll go and play in your room half an hour earlier tonight because we're having our hot date, remember? You know, Mum and Dad's hot date. And they'd be like, oh, it's so gross, you know. But what it did was it instilled in them, you know what? Mum and Dad, our relationship is really important. In fact, it's even more important than you tonight, you know, like, I would still put them to bed and everything like that. But you know what, it just kept kind of putting before them, Mum and Dad, it's really important we spend time together. And I remember at one stage, Annalea's best friend, she found out her best friend's parents were breaking up. And I remember that night, Annalea was crying in bed and she said, Mummy, you know, are you and Daddy going to be okay? You know, because that's the first thing then, it's suddenly, oh, it happened to my friend, will that happen to me, you know? And it was like, no, because, you know, Mummy and Daddy love each other. And I just thought, you know, isn't it good that she gets to continually see Mummy and Daddy want to be together, you know? And I'd say to her, you know, when they'd complain, oh, yeah, we're spending time together, we want to be there. No, because remember, Mummy and Daddy really love each other, so we really want to be together. And isn't it good that we want to spend this time together? And I think it really did build such security in them as they grow up, that they knew that this was really important, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really encourage you too to show affection in front of your kids. You know, they'll sit there and go, ooh, gross, whatever, but do it. You know, like have big kisses and hugs and stuff. And if they start moaning at you, do it more. You know, like gross them out. You know, we aim to, I mean, within reason, obviously, you know, but we aim to gross our kids out because, you know, what it does, they sit there, ooh, but you know what, inside they're going, man, we're so glad Mum and Dad actually love each other. You know, it actually provides real security for them as they're growing up, knowing that their mum and dad really have a great deal of affection for each other. And
another thing we used to do, I'd heard this, I don't know, maybe on Focus on the Family or something, but one thing we used to do is that when Peter would come home from work, this is just another, I guess, practical way we were showing the kids. When Peter would come home from work, he'd always say hi to the kids and give them a kiss and things. But then he'd always say, no, it's time now for, because, you know, they would want his full attention for the next half an hour. No, it's just time for me to talk to Mum at the moment. I'd generally be cooking dinner. So Peter would come in the kitchen, and for about the next 5 or 10 minutes, we would talk and we'd debrief about our day. And you know, at first, you know, the kids want your attention and all the rest of it. But after a while, they just became very aware, oh, no, this is mum and dad, they're going to talk for a while, you know, but we're going to have time with dad soon. And it was just, again, just putting it before them, you know what, mum and dad, you know, this connection, this relationship, it's really important in another visible way for them. And it just really helped sort of set something in the family as well. Yeah.
So just by the way too, we'll do a question and answer thing at the end. So if anything that we're talking about, if there's any questions or stuff that you guys have got or any thoughts or whatever, write it down and bring it up at the end, and we'll do it because we want to be able to get through everything that we had to say first, and then hit all the questions and answers afterwards. Otherwise, we could be here, you know, talking forever on various points. So that's the foundation. So having a strong marriage is absolutely vital to having a strong and healthy family. So really encourage all of you to work on that.
Can I just say about the solo parenting thing? You know, Peter was raised by a solo mum for quite a few years, and he's turned out really awesome.
Well, some people think that.
I think he's pretty awesome. And
debatable.
You know. So sometimes we ride the waves, like Pete was saying, of how things are, but it's all good.
That's right. Cool. So just on to our values. So if the strong marriage is the foundation, then looking at the values, the very first value is having a clear vision and parenting with the end in mind for your family. Have a clear vision about what you want your family to look like. You know, what values do you want them to hold? What do you want the culture of your house to be? What kind of people do you want your kids to be when they leave your household? Every family is going to be different, and our family will be different to yours. But having a clear vision for your family, I think, is really vital, because the things that you're longing to see in your family won't just magically appear because you want them.
Yeah.
You know, just because you've got it in your heart that your family's going to do X, Y, and Z, it's not going to magically happen. It happens because you get intentional about it. And you say, we are going to put these things in our place to get us to this particular point that we want to go with our family. So for us, there was a few things. We wanted a close family who genuinely enjoyed being together. And I think you can see from the video that that's actually, you know, it's not put on for us, actually. We end up, you know, I mean, sometimes, there's bad moods and stuff in the house. I mean, very normal stuff. But honestly, there's other times too, we're crying with laughter because of stuff that's going on and jokes that people are making and things like that. We genuinely enjoy being together as a family. We wanted our kids to be resilient, and we wanted them to be able to take whatever the world threw at them. We thought that for us, that was a really important value. We wanted them to grow up and become responsible adults who could make a positive contribution to society. We were doing our public service by raising our kids well and not releasing rat bags out into the world. Amen. And we wanted our kids to have a strong Christian faith and really love God and love the church as well. So these were some of the things that were important to us, as well as a bunch of other things. So one thing that we did was we spent a lot of time talking with parents that had done it, with kids that we looked at and we thought, man, that family's awesome. And we would sit down with those parents and we would pick their brains. What did you do? And we'd find out, you know, and even some of the stuff that we're sharing with you is stuff that we learned of other parents. You know, ones who'd done it well. Again, the proof is in the pudding. We wanted to see not just who had a great theory about it, you know, who's read some latest teaching, but it's like, well, you know, let's have a look at the evidence here, man. Your family is amazing. What did you do? Let's find out about that. You know, it really blows my mind that so many people will spend hours and hours and thousands of dollars investing into hobbies that they want to improve on and go along to workshops and watch tutorial videos and everything on a particular hobby or skill that they want to improve on. And yet the very greatest entrustment that we've been given, which is the lives of our kids, we often spend like no time on that, or we just leave it all to chance. You know, so I really encourage you, you know, to not just leave it up to chance. On a practical note, 5 Love Languages author Gary Chapman says, write down a list of things that you want your kids to know by the time they turn 18, and then proactively work on those things. So maybe it's like to be able to cook, to wash clothes, budget, communicate well, respect their boss. Whatever your list looks like, you know, form a vision. You know, and then proactively work on those things. Listen, your child's not going to magically know how to cook by the time they leave home if you don't get intentional and say at some point, okay, we're going to teach you how to cook and you're going to cook a meal for us. They're not going to know how to budget if the very first time you've ever talked to them about money is after they've already left home. So, you know, just get intentional about these things on the journey, you know, look at that. You know, an example, knowing what's important to you helps you make decisions on how you parent, and it's a grid through which you can parent, how you spend your time and your money. You know, an example for us in terms of an intentional thing was was that we made the intentional decisions to send our kids to public school. And I don't want to get into a public school versus Christian school versus homeschooling debate, okay? I mean, you get great people through all of those means. But for us, the intention to send our kids to a public school, we decided to do that because we wanted to raise resilient kids. And so we thought, well, let's, right from the word go, let's put them into the environment that they're going to be spending the rest of their life in with all of these people around them that don't believe the same thing as them. And let's actively coach them through this as they go through, not just leave them in there, but let's coach them, let's work through this because, you know, let's start them off in the environment that they're going to finish in. So for that was an intentional decision that we made with that.
Yeah, you know, another thing that we did was, you know, I really love the fact that growing up in our family, my family, with my parents and my brother and I, we would just spend hours and hours and hours in a day, you know, on a Saturday or Sunday, sitting around talking. Yeah, and so for us then, you know, when we had our family, we're like, okay, we want to cultivate this, you know, and that's what happens, you know, and that's why we put in meal times are so important for us, you know, breakfast and dinner and those sorts of things. You know, having fun is really important to us, so, you know, singing crazy songs, you know, in the car when on holiday, or making music videos. I mean, just random things like that. That's the fun stuff that brings that element into our family, and we love doing that. But it does, you put aside time for it and you intentionally make these things happen. So, yeah, so that's the first one, clear vision and parenting with the end in mind. So the second value is clear approach, consistency and unity in parenting. Clear approach and having consistency and unity in your parenting. This to me is a huge one, which is you make sure that you are a united front.
Yeah.
You and your husband, wife, you just have to be united, right? Because kids, they will just smell, you know, any kind of disunity out. If you're just slightly wavering on something, they will get in there. They are really clever. You know, it's really important to have conversations about what you think about certain things before that thing happens. You know, decide ahead of time, what do you think about that? You know, for us, we talked about many different topics of parenting and what we thought about that. If we could look ahead, you know, about particular movies or particular things at different stages and ages, what age they can have a cell phone, we would talk about those sorts of things before we got to that point, so that they couldn't corner one of us and go, I really want this, and we go, oh, okay, well, that shouldn't be too bad, and then the other one's like, what? You know, like, no way is that happening. And, you know, if you do disagree with what the other person has said, smile nicely in the moment, give the look to your other half, and then talk about it behind closed doors, you know, and it's absolutely all good to thrash these things out, but don't thrash it out in front of the kids. In front of the kids, you are a united front, and yep, you absolutely back the other person up. I remember growing up, I'd go, if my mum said no, I'd go to my dad, which is what most kids do, and my dad would always say, what did your mother say? Yeah. And it was useless, because I was like, well, great, I can't get around you, because you'll just say, what did your mother say, and you'll back whatever mum said, you know. So be like that, just be a great united front. Another one is be really consistent. Be so consistent in your parenting. If you say something, follow through on it. This is like one of the, you know, this is one of the basics, but just follow through on it. Every now and then we might want to change our minds on something that we've said, and if you do, then sit down and talk about why you've changed your mind on that thing. But on the whole, say something and stick by it. You know, do not give in or change things around. And you know, it's very easy to stay consistent when you do have that end goal in mind as to why you've made that decision. You know, like one of our things that we really knew was important to us was carrying on running a Connect group when we had our kids. We had all 3 kids while running a Connect group. We ran a Connect group for like the first 10 years, I guess, in our marriage, from the time we got married right through having all 3 kids. And then once Jaden was a baby, we began leading the church, and so then we had to start having elders meetings in our home. And so because we were having people pitch up in our home every single week at 7:30, for us bedtime was a really important thing, and that our kids had a routine was massive in our family. And so our kids would have a very defined bedtime routine. Generally, when they were like preschool, primary school age, they were in bed by 6:30, cuddled down, and going off to sleep. Sometimes in summer it was obviously harder because it was light outside, but they were cuddled down and going off to sleep. And that was really important to us. We stuck through with that. We worked hard on it because we were aware that God had this other stuff that we were to be doing in our lives, and we couldn't do those things in our life if our kid was still up at 10 o'clock at night jumping on the couch, you know. So it is really hard work, you know. One of our children was just like an angel. You transitioned from a cot to a bed, and then you said stay in the bed, and they stayed in the bed, and it was like, we're the best parents in the world, like what's wrong with people, you know.
We thought we were amazing.
Yeah. 2 other children, it was full on, and we spent months every night. We'd put them to bed, we'd do the routine, we'd pray with them, Every night they'd come back out. Every night we would say, I actually got to the point, I said, you know what? Mummy's parenting hours are over now. They finished. They finished at 7 o'clock. It's all done now. I'm sorry. I'll see you in the morning. But really, you know, we wouldn't get into deep conversations. We wouldn't, you know, no more glasses of water. You know, it's like, because they're so creative, they'll come up with every idea. We worked hard because every night I'd think, I don't want to have to get up and take them back to bed. But every night I was like, you know what? This is going to pay off in the long term because this might take a week. It might take a month. It might take 3 months. But in a year's time, we're not going to still be doing this. It's going to pay off in the long term. So that's why I keep saying, I'm going to be consistent, because if I give in once, that's it. They'll know they've got me, you know, and they will try it on every single night from there on. So just stay consistent, even when it's really hard, you know, and don't start something as just a one-off, because the chances are the kids will want to keep doing that thing again. So think really carefully before you do the one-offs, because you maybe, yeah.
And consistency is really important too when they're moaning at you. Listen, no child ever died because they didn't get their own way. But, you know, I think somehow, particularly in our current situation, in our current world, there seems to be this idea that if the child is in any way unhappy, that we're going to fracture them or break them. That is so untrue. It is so untrue. Listen, it's really important to stay consistent. So when, like for example, if you go to the supermarket with your toddler, and they want lollies, and you don't want them to have lollies this time around, then they don't get lollies. End of story. And the thing is, too, I mean, we certainly walked through it. We had ones that did tantrums the entire time. So, you know, they'd be in the trolley and screaming blue murder the entire way around the supermarket, and I had the looks of every other parent and every other old woman who'd long forgotten what it was like to raise kids, going at me, you know. And I even had once a woman take a lollipop off the shelf and offer it. And I said, you know what? No, please don't do that, because at the moment we are learning that we don't just get our own way through screaming, you know. And and so I think I totally offended her, but I really didn't care. Because at the end of the day, you see, what if you give in at the last lap, then they learn. What they pick up is like, oh, okay, I just have to keep pushing this just for long enough, and then, you know, then I'll get my way. And I mean, it sounds like a battle, and it kind of is in a way. When they're little, you must win. You must win. It's really important. You know those rat bags that you work with that are like 40 or 50 years old and they're still having tantrums and crying and screaming and yelling when they don't get their own way? That started when they were 3 years old. Nobody ever disciplined them. Nobody ever said this is not an acceptable way to live your life. You know, and let's not release those people out into society, amen? So let's, you know, we really want to make sure that, you know, just to be consistent with the things. Don't give in. And especially, too, I would say if they're having tantrums about stuff, it's absolutely, you know, whatever they might have going to get, they're really not going to get now. You know, we would sometimes just walk away from them. You know, we'd leave them in an aisle and we'd just go walking away. I mean, like, that sounds terrible, but what we were teaching them was, well, you know what? It just doesn't work, man. You can scream and yell all you like, but that has like no currency with us. And after a while, they learned, you know. But, you know, we went through the hell while they were learning and got all the looks while they were learning. But in the end, eventually they went around the supermarket, and at the beginning they said, can we have lollies? And I said, not today. And that was it. They knew. Okay, on to the next one.
So the third value that we have here is clear stages, having age-appropriate parenting. Yep. And so there are four phases of parenting that we're just going to run through now, and it's really important that we always remember that we are the parent. Okay, we are the parent. We are not the friend. We are not the buddy. We are the parent for many, many years. One day you'll get to be the friend, and then you'll get to really enjoy the friend stage. But you get to enjoy the friend stage if you do these other 3 stages beforehand really well, okay? So we need to just make sure that we do that. Kids enter this world needing to be taught moral values and life skills, and we as parents are their teachers to do so. We have the goal to be their friend one day, but in the earlier years, we are to be their parents and their guides. So don't ever be afraid that your kids might not like you. And you might have times where they will tell you that they don't like you.
I hate you. You're the worst parent in the world I've ever had,
Yeah, it's okay. It passes.
We've heard that many times.
Yeah, and Peter would often say, my self-esteem is not in the hands of my children. And he says that to them. They'll just be like, and he'd just be like, you know what? My self-esteem is not in the hands of my children. It's okay, And I mean, it's just become a running joke. Like, they just say it to us now because they've heard it so many times. But just really don't let it affect you. Sometimes it will affect you, because actually, we have soft hearts and we love our kids to bits. And so there'll be moments you're like, oh, I just really want it, But just keep remembering about the long-term thing. So.
Yeah. So the first stage is the leadership stage, and that's up to 6 years old. So we're just going to run through the various stages. I'm guessing across the room we've got kids in different stages and ages and things like that. But up to 6 years old, in this stage, you are the leader and you set the experiences for the child. It's about, at this stage, setting very clear boundaries and teaching them what's safe and what's not. And it's at this stage of their life, you don't want to be giving them a lot of choice and a lot of freedom. They really need to be doing what you are setting. You need to define their world as a parent when they're in this stage of their life. It's really important they learn to respect you as a parent and that they do as you're telling them to do. And obviously all of this is done in an atmosphere of love and, cuddles and, tickles and fun. Okay, so, you're hearing a little bit from us about rah-rah, but actually you just got to understand too, I mean, all of the rest of the stuff was there. We had a lot of fun with the kids growing up, we'd crawl around the lounge room with them and chase them and build forts and do all this sort of stuff. But at the same time, though, there were very clear boundaries that were put around them when they were very small, and it was done for their own benefit. We came across this thing called the funnel approach, and it's a really good way of kind of just understanding parenting. And in fact, it's actually a principle that works beyond parenting and actually works a lot in life, because actually it's a leadership principle, and it actually works out there in the world too. But I'll just explain it, and that is that you've got the narrow end of the funnel opening up like this. And so what you want to do is when your child is little, they have very, very tight boundaries around their life, very small amount of flexibility and choice. These are the experiences that they're allowed to have. These are the things that they will be doing, and they don't get a lot of choice in it. As they grow older, you have to start to open that funnel up, right? Because how many know if you try to treat a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old the same way you're treating a 3-year-old, you're not going to win. But you see, what often happens though with parenting is that a child comes on the scene and the parents try to be the friend to start off with, and so they give them really wide boundaries from the word go. And listen, that becomes really hard because if you give your kids too wide a boundary too early, you end up being the parent who has to say no all the time. It's like, oh, no, don't do that. Oh, no, don't do that. No, don't do that. We had certain things in our household, like for example, when they were crawling, in our kitchen had a lino floor and the rest of our house had carpet. The kids, when they were crawling, were not allowed to crawl into the kitchen. The whole kitchen was no. And so we put their hands, when they started crawling, we literally did this. We put their hands on the lino and we said, no, and so then every time they would climb up, as soon as they put their hands on the lino, we would grab them, we'd squeeze their hands and say, no, And so it was funny because we had these little kids, when they were crawling around, they crawl right up to the edge of the kitchen, and they'd sit there at the edge of the kitchen, well, 2 of them would, and the third one of us would look at us and go, and we had a battle with one of them who shall remain nameless, but she was hard work. And, oops. But the fact is, though, you see, the reason we did that was not to be Nazi with them. The reason we did that is one no, you can't go in the kitchen, stopped 1,000 no's in the kitchen. So it wasn't, no, you can't touch the stove. No, you can't empty the contents of that cupboard over there. No, you can't eat the cat food. there was all these other no's. The kitchen was full of no's. So what we did was we just identified the one big no that we'd have as opposed to having to deal with 1,000 small no's. So does that make sense? It's funnel approach. Obviously, as they grew older, we let them come in the kitchen. It's not like you're 30, you're not allowed in the kitchen anymore. There's a time and a place where they have reached a developmental age where you can actually have a conversation with them and they're not going to do dumb things that hurt themselves, right? So you want to do that. And it's interesting, the funnel approach, how many here had the teacher at school that tried to be buddy-buddy with everybody on the first day and lost control of the class by the end of the first week? We all know that teacher, right? But the one that we respected was the one who was firm but fair from day one, but then over the course of the year, they began to loosen up. And it's exactly the same way with parenting. So really want to encourage you, if you've got little ones, have quite tight boundaries around their lives. They all had set non-negotiable bedtimes and times when they were allowed to get out of bed in the morning. They had to eat what was put in front of them, otherwise they went without. We had set times they had to play by themselves in their playpen or in a room with no devices. That was to help them learn independent play and learn that they weren't always going to have 100% of mummy and daddy's attention. We did that. If they disobeyed, there was swift consequences. And we had friends who said to us, man, you guys are really tough on your kids, stuff. But here's the thing. They learnt obedience and respect for authority at a young age. And as they grew older, we were able to relax the boundaries. So we set bedtimes later and later as they got older to the point where now they choose when they want to go to bed. We slowly allowed them to have more choice in what they ate as they grew older, etc., etc. These days we've completely taken the reins off Analia and Nathan. Obviously off Nathan, off Analia. There's very, very little rules that we have around her, and most of the stuff around Jaden now is off as well because it's age appropriate. Tight at the beginning, and the interesting thing is, as they grew, they actually still chose most of the time to stay within the initial boundaries that we'd kind of set for them, generally speaking. I'm not talking about going into the kitchen and stuff. But the interesting thing is, though, that what you find is that if you're tough on them, as they grow, you begin to relax the boundaries, and now they've got the freedom to go out all the way out over here, and yet what we've found is they choose not to go over there. They actually choose to stay within here. To the point now, we are never worried about what they're up to, ever, because they choose now to live within those boundaries. This is what the Bible means when it says train a child. It's not just us kind of saying, well, you do whatever you want and we'll just kind of say, no, we've got to show them from a young age what's what, okay?
Yeah, and I think with that, not giving too many choices is a really big thing. Don't say to I don't know, 2.5-year-old, well, what do you want to wear? Choose anything you want, because they don't want to wear everything on one day. Put out two things and say, do you want to wear this top or do you want to wear this top? You just give them an amount of choice that they can actually handle for the age that they're at, and you just open it up. But, really for us, we haven't had to do curfews on our kids or anything like that as they've gone into the teenage years because, we really were firm when they were little, but we really can trust them completely now that they're older, so it really is worth doing the hard yards when they're young because as they're older, it really does pay back great dividends, yeah.
Cool. All right, we'll just move on. Stage 2 is the training stage. This is 7 to 12 years, and the cool thing about this stage is that they still want to be around you. That doesn't last.
Yeah.
You're still cool at this stage. After this stage, you're not so cool for a while. But this is the stage of life where they're most open to learning and taking on your family values and worldview. And I really want to encourage you here. There's an important principle called first learning. And this is the principle that is your friend at the ages from 7 to 12. Whatever their first teaching is on something, whatever a child learns first about something, that is the thing which they take on, and then they will judge all subsequent truth against that initial truth. That's why it's so important as parents, we've got to get in there with the truth that we want them to have first before the world gets in there with the truth that they want them to have. A good example of this is that I wanted our kids to know that, obviously God is real, that He's made everything. Creation is an important thing for me. So, even when they were growing up, I'd be showing them leaves or getting a look at their hands, say, look, isn't that amazing? Just think about the complexity that it takes, And I would say to them, even as they were starting school, one day at school, they're going to try to tell you that, there was a big bang that made all of this sort of stuff, and we came from apes. And this is what they're going to try and tell you one day, but God made you. And I would talk through all this sort of stuff. And it was so funny because I literally remember the day for each one of them, they came running home from school breathless. Dad, you'll never believe what they tried to teach me at school today. But you know, the interesting thing is if I hadn't said anything, and if they'd gone off to school and heard that, then they would have heard, you know, the world got made by a big bang, and then I'm then responding to their first learning. So I'm the one then who's going, oh, no, God made it. Oh, really? That doesn't sound right. You see, so you've got a massive opportunity. If your kids are between kind of 7 to 12, that's where you want to get in your worldview. The stuff that's important to you as a family, the, you know, Christian values, things like that. That's the age that you really want to be getting that stuff in, because that's when they're most open and most receptive to it.
Yeah, this is the age you can really talk to them about their friendships, about who are good people to be friends with. You can dial up and dial down relationships that they have in their lives. Don't be afraid to do that, because at this point and talk to them about that. You know, like we had neighbours at one point and the boys swore like anything, and so I would never diss the boys or anything, but I would say, hey, why don't they come and play at our house? You know, it'd be really cool to have them here in our home, and then I'd just say, oh no, we don't use language like that or whatever. But I'd talk to the kids about, you know, other ones. Hey, you know, they seem like a really good friend to have, you know, Johnny at church, you know, or whatever. But I tell you what, as well, at this stage is the stage you want to have your kids very involved at River Kids, as a part of coming to the holiday program, if you want to do that. Being involved with this group of friends here at church. Yeah. Don't, when they're 14 and things are beginning to fall apart, go, oh, you know what, I think you should go to youth group. No, they are not going to want to go to youth group when you have never.
We'll still try and get them there, but it's just going to be harder. That's all.
Yeah,
you know?
It's going to be a lot easier if they've grown up that this is, you know. I don't know if Annalia, we had to edit a lot out, but Annalia had said how some of her best friends, are all her friends she's grown up with in church, and how it's meant a lot to her, because at school there's hardly any Christians, and so it means a lot to her that she has friends here that she can be friends with. You know, other things too, this is when you get in things about what's appropriate to wear. You know, again, you know, once your daughter's a teenager, then don't go, oh, I don't really want you wearing that slinky bikini. You know, when Annalia was like probably 5, you know, she'd see pictures of things and I'd go, oh, that's not very nice, is it? You know, oh, that's you know, oh, we wouldn't want to wear things like that. You put these things in there at a really young age of what's okay and what's not okay, because this is they're eating it all up. I remember at one point as well, one of the kids, well, actually all the kids at different times, this will put you all off public schooling, but they brought home a reader about My Two Dads. And they didn't even think twice about it, you know. And I'm like, oh, look at that,
excellent.
You know. You know, but you know what? For a really young age, we had a big talk all about. Yep. Wow, some families have 2 dads, you know. Oh, you know, I wonder how God wants our family to be, you know. And so you'd have these conversations. Oh, and then we'd have other conversations. They'd come home from school. Not everybody knows God. We'd be like, no, isn't that just so sad? You know, what could we do about that? So this is the times you're putting in all those things, which is going to really help them as they grow up.
Cool. Okay, then on to stage 3. Which is the coaching, 13 to 19 years. These are sometimes called the whitewater years because they can be a complete roller coaster. But this is where the hard work and all the formative years really pays off if you've been doing it. So the key to understand during these years is individuation. And that is the fact that during these years, they're wanting to become their own person and define who they are. The important thing during this stage is that you need, as a parent, to become unshockable and unflappable and not overreact. You just need to take a breath. Your child might come home and say, Dad, I've decided I'm going to become an atheist. You know, and if you sit there and go, oh no, my Johnny, he's going to be an wife, come here, we've got to cast the spirit of unbelief out of you. Know, I mean, if you overreact at that particular point in time, it's just, don't do that. You know, the best thing you can do is you go, wow, that's interesting. Tell me about that. Let's talk about that. Because you see, at this stage, they're starting to try different things on. They're just trying to work things out in life. So be unshockable and unflappable as a parent. And you know what? There might be some battles that you just decide, oh, I'm just going to let that one go. You know what? Yeah. My daughter's just going to have purple hair for a while. And we're going to be all right with that. We're just going to live. Yes, it's all good. You know, that's not the end of the world. Let's pick our battles. Let's really choose the things we're going to go after, and let's let some other things go.
Yeah, keep up the things that you've instilled in your family. That's when you're grateful that you decided that family dinner times were important, because it's teenagers, they won't want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
But you go, hey, no, this is what our family does, remember. This is what we do. We sit at the table, we have dinner, and then they do it, maybe begrudgingly some days, but then they'll end up talking and sharing about their day, and you do end up having laughs and having a great time. So you just keep those things. Oh, I don't want to go to church. No. That's what we do. We go to church.
Yeah.
That's just what our family does. Non-negotiable. Other things don't get in the way. Sports, whatever. No. Sundays, remember? It's only a few hours on a Sunday. We go to church. That's what we do. You keep up those things that are important as a family, and just keep saying, no. While you're in our family, this is what we do. Yeah, there will be some things that you, like Pete says, you might need to let go of. You know, for us, you know, there came a point, Pete, that Nathan said, you know what, I don't really want to come on holiday with you this year. You know, and inside I'm like, he doesn't want to come on holiday. You know, it's like, this is the end. It was the last one, and I didn't realise it was the last one last time, you know. But we were like, oh, okay, you know, you're 17, all right, that's cool. So for 2 years, he didn't come on holiday with us. We're like, all right, well, we're going to have a good time without him, that's fine. And then this year he's been in Christchurch, and you know what? He's come on holiday with us this year because he misses it. And he realises, wow, I am so grateful for time that we get to be as a family on holiday. So, you know, you just ride the wave sometimes, and yeah, you just let them go with it. And I want to say too, especially for mums, if you have sons around the age of about 12, they will begin to pull back from you a bit, and dad will suddenly become the most important person in their life. And I remember Nathan, he was just started youth group, and he was going to go off on youth camp. Oh, no, it was to a youth conference, and I was freaking out. I was like, what if they forget him? What if they don't bring him home, you know? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like all bad, you know. And Pete's like, seriously, Anika? Let him go. Like, just let it go. Let him go. He'll be fine. He's not going to die. It'll be all right, you know. And that day I heard on the radio, and they were talking about this exact thing, and they said, you know what, it's like crossing a bridge. The boy reaches about 12 and he wants to go over that bridge, and mum, you got to stay on this side of the bridge, and you got to go, yay, I'm so behind you as you cross that bridge. And dad is there, and dad is going to walk alongside him, and he's going to answer his questions, and it's going to be all good. So mums, we have to kind of at particular times as well let go a bit, you know, even though it's really hard because they're your baby, and actually go, you know what, there'll be things I will never know about. There'll be conversations our boys have with Pete, and I'm never going to know some of the stuff that's going on, and that's okay. And there's going to be things that go on for Analia Pete might not know about. Obviously, no, he probably doesn't want to know. So, you know, and that's all good. So just, you know, ride with the different ages and stages as well.
And that brings us on to the last stage, which is the friendship stage, 20 and over. And this is basically, you know, when you now have actually become friends with your child. So you do reach the place of friendship, but just don't start that one too early. You've got to go through the process. And at this stage, what, you know, we're only really beginning in this stage at the moment, but what we can tell you that we're learning fast is that we have to nod and basically shut our mouths. Because, you know, like Nathan's doing really well, but, you know, there's certain choices that he's making and things like that that, you know, are making us nervous. And we're kind of like, you know, we want to double check everything. And when we do that, if we start to push on that, then we get the pushback really fast. And we're just having to learn, you know what? Okay, you're going to make your calls. We can throw the old little stone over the wall, the little thought that we can put in there. But at this stage now, he's living his life. And what he needs is a mum and a dad who are cheering for him and encouraging him. You know, and sometimes we'll be very fearful about the things that they might be wanting to do or whatever. But listen, when they're 20 plus, they're no longer a 3-year-old. You can't sit them down and berate them. You can't put all those, you know, barriers and everything around them. So view your parenting in a lot of ways. You've got to understand, in those early years, it's like an arrow. You get a lot of input into stuff. But then as they get older, you get less and less input. So make sure that you make the most of the early years.
And also I'll just say, do not be afraid about other good people in your kids' lives having a voice in them. I am so thankful that our kids as teenagers have awesome youth leaders around them. They've got Claire as an awesome youth pastor. They've got other people in the church. Like, this is so important to be in church. We've got, our kids will go to other people. Annalia goes to Amy regularly and talks to Amy about stuff. I love that. I'm so appreciative. I'm not threatened by it. I'm like, thank you, God, there's another voice. Nathan's been got this situation that's come up for him, very, very exciting. And I said to him, you need to talk to Tony. You need to call Tony and talk to Tony. You know, like Tony, he's the best person to have input here, and I knew Tony could have input where maybe we might not be able to into that particular thing. So have good people around their lives and point them towards those good people as well. Don't be afraid that there's others there.
Now, I've just realised it's gone 3 o'clock. I do have a brief thing here on how to pass your faith on to your kids. But I also, I'm aware it's gone over 3 o'clock, and I'm just wondering before we get into that, because what I could do is, what I'll do here is I'll just put this final slide up there, and you can feel free, if you want to ask any questions about any of that. But any questions that you guys have got on anything that we've covered thus far, because we wanted this to just be a useful thing, you know, kind of two ways, and we didn't quite know exactly how long it was going to take, and it's taken us a little longer than what we thought. We thought we were going to have about 15 minutes at the end, and we haven't. So any questions or anything that you guys want to ask about? Yeah. Okay. So what I think is really important is to kind of not wrap them in cotton wool all the time. You allow them to have certain experiences that you know isn't always going to maybe be fun for them, but you don't always rescue them. You know, one big thing that we did is that you know, sometimes they would be facing something at school with a friend, you know, or maybe a bullying situation or whatever. And, you know, what's really tempting is as parents, you want to go down there and, you know, beat up the teacher and beat up the principal and, you know, whatever. And there's times for that. There's times where if it reaches a particular point that as a parent, you do need to get involved. But what we thought, you know, when our kids were growing up, often we would sit down and we would just talk around it and we would help coach them through it so that they were the ones doing it, as opposed to us kind of helicoptering in and saving them from a lot of stuff, you know. So I remember Nathan at one point was being, bullied by this kid at school. So I just gave him a bunch of things, you know. I taught him about actually, you know, in a lot of ways, even the way he held himself was important. That if he walked around kind of, you know, sloop and that sort of stuff, that he could attract that sort of thing. So to hold himself like a man. Also too, to not, you know, to avoid those guys. Don't go near them, you know, like go and play with these ones, whatever. But it was getting them to kind of make those things and for them to realize that they were powerful. And just another illustration which happened just recently. I was talking to a father here in the church, and the son, quite young, about 7 years old maybe, was having night terrors, was having night terrors every night, you know, just absolutely terrified, and was ending up in the parents' bed every night. And the dad was looking, going, look, this just isn't good, but they weren't sure what to do. And when I was talking to him, I just relayed to him a story that really helped me when I was little. My stepfather, you know, I used to see very clearly in the spirit, and I would see a lot of stuff. And it was quite terrifying at times. And so my stepfather sat me down once and he said, you know what, there's so much power in the name of Jesus. When you say that name of Jesus, every demon has to flee. You know, and he says, so the next time you think about that, you say that name, Jesus. You pray the name of Jesus, and that demon's going to have to run away, you know. And I remember being scared and then saying the name of Jesus, and I felt powerful. You know, and what that was doing was that was teaching me that I could do it. I didn't have to have mum and dad. You see, I think probably one of, you know, you've all seen the meme, you know, back in the 1960s, you know, the teacher looking at the kids going, you know, why are your grades so bad, you know, and the 2019 is the parents looking at the teacher going, why are my kids' grades so bad? You know, I think it's really important to be able to build that kind of resilience, and so we have to allow them to walk through stuff, not rescuing them all the time. But you've got to use your wisdom too, because sometimes there are situations that you do need to step in and you go, okay, this is no longer cool.
Yeah, and like Jaden, when he was young, he went through a phase, he'd watched a movie and it really scared him, and he began having he was petrified of going to bed at night. He was very, very scared. And I'm talking like tears. Shaking, petrified. And I was like, Lord, I don't know what to do. You know, this is terrible. And anyway, but I just had this idea of, look, I said to him, I talked to him about that scripture about God hasn't given us a spirit of fear, but a love, power, and a sound mind. And but I knew he needed that reminder, and so what we did was we actually got a blank canvas, and the next day we painted it. I got him to paint it on this canvas, and we put it up in his room. And I said to him, you know, every time at night when you get scared, you can look up at that and you can remind yourself of that thing and read that thing. And it really helped. And straight away he was fine. He didn't cry again when he went to bed, and all the rest of it. And Peter's shared that again with others, and they've done that, and it's helped as well, you know. So I think it's kind of helping to try to empower them when they're in the situations that are quite tough, so they know that there's a way out and that there's a way through what they're facing. But they know that mum and dad are totally there with them to help them.
No, I just think I applaud you for being here, Lindsay. Good on you, mate. That's like awesome. Yep. So before you have kids, before you're married, you know, things to establish for you. Yeah, well, I think a lot, you know, the whole identity thing, just knowing who you are is really important. Like in marriage, 2 halves don't make a whole, 2 wholes make a whole. You know, so you don't go into marriage. I mean, this is more of a marriage question, but you don't go into marriage looking for. You go into marriage. I mean, all of us who've been married for a while, we know. You know, you give a lot more. Well, no, you give and take in marriage, but there is definitely the giving. And you know, it's 2 sides, isn't it? So I would say that's an important thing. But also too, you know what? Read books on this sort of stuff. Yeah. I was a bit funny. Like I'm a real bookworm. I love books, and my stepfather had this incredible library. When I was 8 or 9 years old, I read every book in that library, which was fantastic. There was stuff by John Wimber there, Derek Prince, all this sort of stuff. There was also the Act of Marriage. I read that. That was eye-opening. My mum was a bit shocked that I'd read that one. But you know what? The fact is, though, that I actually ended up reading relationship books. I mean, there was, you know, no one was watching. I was like, oh. Very eye-opening, very enlightening. But, you know, the fact is, though, that, you know, I learnt a lot about relational sort of stuff even by reading those books. And it actually helped me when we started dating and when we got married and stuff, because it gave me language and ways to be able to understand. So I just encourage you, man, and applaud you for being here, because I honestly think it's never too early to learn this stuff. You know, don't wait until you've got the kids to learn about the kids. Yeah. You know, if you don't have kids yet, then read up, you know, and, you know, hit up couples that are doing it well. Learn everything you can. That's what we did. Yeah. And we would actually sit down before we had kids and we would say, so, you know, imagine one day that they're 14 and they come, or no, I don't know, 18 or something. They come home and they tell us that we're pregnant. What are we going to do? Yeah. You know, like we had all of these crazy conversations and stuff, and we tried to work out in advance how we would respond to various things and stuff. So you just, you know, have the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, my big thing is always just there's always someone else that knows stuff that we don't know, you know, and there'll be someone out there, whether professionally or in church circles, or, you know, often in church circles there's other people that have got older kids and have been through stuff. So I'd go and talk to them and say, okay, if my kid's struggling with anxiety, for instance, then, you know, what did you find helped, you know, like, or what counsellors or things like that. I would be very much, yeah, seeking others out to find out how I could help them through that particular situation. I mean, I've done that probably not so much with mental health things, but there's been so many situations our kids have gone through and all through the years. And for me, one of my best friends is Karen Redwood here in church, Chris and Karen. And Karen, we actually only became friends when I had Nathan, and she, you know, her kids are, well, her daughter is, they've got Amy, Emily and Ben, and, you know, Amy's the one that Analia goes to, funnily enough. But, you know, I go to Karen about everything all the time, you know, like right since my kids were babies right through to now into adulthood, you know, now with Nathan moving away and I'm having to let go of him completely. I'm like, okay, Karen, we need a coffee. Like, oh my goodness, you know, I've got to do this, you know, and she's brilliant. So yeah, I would say you just find someone else who's kind of been through that thing, or if it's a medical thing, you know, find the right medical people to be able to help and input, and I mean, these are very much guidelines, the whole stages, you know, it really does differ. I mean, Nathan was like an adult when he was 5, you know, yeah. So we had to kind of, you know,
planning world domination at that point.
Yeah, he really was. So, you know, yeah. You got to kind of roll with it, yeah. But yeah, on the whole, that kind of general guidelines. Can
I also say too, just on that front, that I'm a big believer in the fact that we as parents, our voices into them actually helps define who they are. And so sometimes, you know, particularly with specific physical things, okay, you might have some challenges. But when it comes to things that are mental or emotional, I really encourage parents just to really continue to speak prophetically in a way over your kids. Like you heard in that video, Nathan, you know, when he started, when he was little, he would hide behind Anika. He was a very shy kid when he started off. Now, you wouldn't look at Nathan now and think he's shy. at all. But you know what we looked at, and we thought, you know what, that's not a quality that we want to encourage in him. Yeah. So then we just looked, and so then I would say over him all the time, you're such a confident boy, you're awesome. And then I drag him out. We do handshake practices, and I put him in situations and things. So I pushed him a bit. But so it's interesting because just because they're presenting with something doesn't necessarily mean that's the final word on it.
Yes.
We've got to be wise as parents because there's certain things that they will be doing that we have to look at and say, actually, no. That's not who you are. You're going to be like this. And then there's other things that's like, all right, we're going to have to work with this. Like if there's particular, dysfunction in their body or something like that or
probably
whatever.
Like Jaden's speech delay, that went on for years, and you had speech therapy for years, and it was tough.
Full on.
But
still, even with that though.
Yeah, we would say, wow, God's got awesome plans for
you.
You're going to speak to. I
see
God's
you speaking to people
speak to thousands of people one day. God has put this gift within you, and today
you see him up there now.
He was doing the main part in the skit out in River Kids, for the holiday program, and he's been learning his lines all week, and he's got a gift for learning lines. So I just go, well, God, that's amazing. I wouldn't have thought.
This is a kid who couldn't even speak proper English at 3. He had his own language that we all got used to, but he had years of speech therapy to kind of get through. So I just want to encourage you, no matter what your kids are presenting with, it's not necessarily the end. We have a lot of power
phases,
to be able to
don't freak out if you're in a phase and your kid's being like a nightmare, or you work with it, but it doesn't mean that this is how it's going to be forever. You ride the waves of things that go on, and things will change, and you'll get through it, and it'll all be good. Peter was a nightmare child, I hear, and look how great he is.
I love how I'm the example for all of these things.
I said you're
wonderful. It's not about how bad a rat bag you've got. It's all right. Thanks, son. That's brilliant.
We hope you enjoyed today's message. For more information on the River Christian Church, check out our website, www.theriver.org.nz.